Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a US political update analysis. I'm just going to go through some things that Elon Musk has been doing in the middle of the government with Doge and getting the president to sell his cars for him as on an infomercial on the White House lawn, and going on to talk a little bit about the economics of what's going on at the moment, tariffs. It's all going crazy. If you haven't watched my live with Edward Hunter Christie, please do so. I did that today, and there's a fascinating insight into what might be going on in terms of Trump's approach to organising the world and why he might be doing some of these kind of tariff things, making the moves on Canada, making the moves on Greenland, which we'll be talking about. But it's all could be all part of literal kind of imperialistic expansionism in light of an isolationist. In other words, we want to be self-dependent. In order to be self-dependent and not interact with the rest of the world and not be part of any kind of alliances or whatever, we need to basically have all the resources we need. Greenland and Canada will provide all of that for us. Then we'll be completely self-sufficient, and then we'll own Panama Canal and have access to across both, from one ocean to another. And then actually we'll be this don't really care what the people that live there want. If we have that, then we'll be a hugely powerful empire, if you like, that is carving up the world with Russia and China, kind of seeing the EU as an enemy entity. But in case you haven't seen this, so from an economic point of view, before we actually, I know this really should come later, but I just want to preface this video with the spot-on analysis from this Economist on the news yesterday that's been doing the rounds.
I'm going to say this at risk of my job, Kelly, but what President Trump is doing is insane. It is absolutely insane. It is about the 8th reason we've had for the tariffs, and now he's saying he's putting 50% tariffs on Canada unless they agree to become the 51st state. That is insane. There is just no other way of describing it. And the trouble, Kelly, is that it shows there are no bounds around President Trump. This is very different from the first administration, where there were people around him who seemed to, I don't know what the word is, but smooth over some of the edges now. And the other thing that's not talked about, Kelly, is what's going on within the administration in terms of how they're treating the Constitution and laws. I think all of that is bad for the attraction of capital. And the gentleman from Bridgewater is 100% right. We need massive amounts of capital if we want to fund our deficits, pay for the things we want to pay for, sell our bonds, and have high stock prices. And it seems as if this administration is doing everything it can to chase foreign capital away.
Well, and we could go into the strategy of the insanity as a strategy in terms of our trading
Insanity is not a strategy. I'm sorry. I'm with you, Kelly, in trying to look for silver linings. I'm a sunny person.
Not silver linings, tactics, right?
Some explanation for this other than insanity. I'm ready to accept it if you can come up with one.
And that tactic might actually, that strategy might actually be just attacking our allies, because they're not really our allies. No one's our ally. This is a zero-sum game world, and anyone else gaining is our loss, so we need to gain. And rather than do trade, like I said in my live with Edward Hunter Christie, I don't think Trump sees the world at all in how it really is and understanding the basics of trade. He talks about trade deficits, but doesn't understand it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not prima facie bad to have a trade deficit. We're importing more than we're exporting because actually we have needs, more needs than they do. And you go back to the basics of trade. So if you are selling me a bag of sweets and I pay you £1 for a bag of sweets, I am getting value for that because I am giving you what I think those sweets are worth. And you are selling me those sweets at what you think they're worth. And you receive £1 and I receive the sweets, and we're both happy. Trade is, if you're doing that trade, you're generally going to be in a situation where, yeah, I'm all right with that. I've actually, it must be of that value because I've given you that money. Okay, we can talk about times when it's not quite the case. But the basics of trade is a positive sum game, right? But I don't think he sees trade like that. And just looks at these balances and saying, right, that's bad. So we need to equalise that. We need to balance that trade deficit. But of course, no. If every country in the world had balanced trade, it's just impossible. And what about the countries where the US has, it's the other way round for the US, and it's the other country that has the deficit. He's not worried about that, and so I think he's just got a warped sense of how things should operate, and or if it's not him, it's the people around him. So remember, I think an awful lot of this kind of higher level ideology is coming from Project 2025 and the people in his administration that he has in place. And he's kind of the figurehead. He goes along with it, but I don't think he's thinking particularly deeply. He thinks very much transactionally, which they can utilize in order for him to get what they want, which is a larger, potentially larger American empire that includes Canada, Greenland, Panama Canal, and doesn't see, as I say, the EU as an ally. So let's go back to what Elon Musk is doing, which is the other part of what the Project 2025 administration is trying to do, which is gut the government, small government, ideological purging of people, they don't agree with, implement Christian nationalism effectively into the government, and so on and so forth. It's quite incredible. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about getting rid of federal employees.
You can protest all you want outside of departments of this government. You can protest all you want, but the American people disagree with you. You're protecting the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is not a business. Those are not real jobs producing federal revenue. By the way, they're consuming taxpayer dollars. Those jobs are paid for by the American tax people who work real jobs, earn real income, pay federal taxes, and then pay these federal employees. Federal employees do not deserve their jobs. Federal employees do not deserve their paychecks. And these are jobs.
Is she a federal employee? But anyway, federal employees do not deserve their jobs. They do not deserve their paychecks. This is incredibly insulting. This is an egregious opinion.
That can be fired at will.
So it just blows my mind that someone can have this opinion. It is terrible. Teachers and hardworking. It's as if every federal employee is just lazy and trying to get away with not doing what they're supposed to be doing or whatever. And of course, then you go on to, you're talking about tax dollars and not bringing any money into that. Well, actually, why have you sacked 7,000 IRS members of staff who are working on entities over $10 million predominantly that would be returning on a ratio of at least 6 to 7 to 1 to the amount of money they cost? So it's not only a really egregious opinion, kind of like morally speaking, like to insult the entire federal government, all the employees that are allowing the American government to work. Does that include all the soldiers and Air Force members? What does she mean by federal employees? It's just, I find it despicable. But none of it makes any sense anyway. And then you've got Elon Musk getting rid of FAA employees, Federal Aviation Authority employees, and then putting a kind of advert on Twitter by saying there's a shortage of top-notch air traffic controllers. If you have retired but are open to returning to work, please consider doing so. And then appealing to Twitter to get FAA employees back because they've oversacked people. It's like Doge going around getting rid of the nuclear maintenance people, and they go, better get them back. And then Ebola safety people, better get them back. You just don't know what they're doing. They're just gutting people willy-nilly. The FAA is awarding a new contract, though, to Elon Musk's SpaceX to help manage US airspace. This is on top of the tens of billions of dollars in federal government contracts that Musk's companies have already secured. And you've got this whole controversy with Verizon and then shutting them off and then providing FAA with SpaceX comms and internet connectivity and et cetera, and it's just grift. Senator Tina Smith saying this is corruption in plain sight. The FAA may cancel a $2.4 billion contract with Verizon and instead give it to Starlink, owned by Elon Musk, according to the Washington Post sometime back. This would be his latest opportunity to get richer off the taxpayers. But of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene's not mentioning anything about this. Musk and his businesses have received $38 billion in federal contracts and subsidies. Musk is getting, says Senator Tina Smith, the sweetheart deals for his companies. Doge is helping him to do it. The president is cheering him on. This isn't about government efficiency. It's about making him richer. And ironically, you've got Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, saying that it's the most transparent administration in history.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about a federal judge yesterday was saying that they didn't know who the Doge administrator was and was asking the lawyer for the administration who it was, and the lawyer responded, "I don't know the answer to that. Can you tell us who the administrator of Doge is?"
Again, I've been asked and answered this question. Elon Musk is overseeing Doge. No, Elon Musk is a special government employee, which I've also been asked and have answered that question as well. There are career officials at Doge. There are political appointees at Doge. I'm not going to reveal the name of that individual from this podium. I'm happy to follow up and provide that to you. But we've been...
So, the most transparent administration in history. Who's the administrator of Doge? I'm not going to tell you that. So I presume this is a taxpayer-employed person who, by the way, if it's a federal employee, Marjorie Taylor Greene's just told us they're not worth their wage and we should kick them out. So unless it's just massive cherry-picking day today. But it's just absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. And then, remember, we've got Trump saying stuff like this.
They need our protection, yes.
You mentioned Elon Musk and the efforts that he's undertaking with your authority. You granted him new authority this week. Will he secure any new government contracts while he is working on Doge?
No, not if there's a conflict. If there's no conflict, I guess what difference does it make? But we won't let him do anything having to do with the conflict.
Are you personally...
If there's no conflict, I don't know what difference it makes. So yeah, we'll give them contracts if they're not a conflict. But if there is a conflict, no, we won't get them. What about the FAA contract? Conflict of interest much there? Wow.
To make sure there's no conflicts of interest?
Yeah, I am.
He answers to you.
Sure, he does. First of all, he wouldn't.
So he answers. So Trump says, "I'm the one that sorts out the conflicts of interest," and he doesn't appear to know what's going on in his government. He doesn't know what Elon Musk is doing. This has been widely reported, by the way, not just me speculating. But he apparently doesn't really know what Musk does, and then that's why every time he's questioned about stuff, his question about the Irish. So he's got the TSOC in the White House in the Oval Office today, and has slagged off Ireland, just like the whole Zelensky thing. He gets the leader of Ireland in and then slags off Ireland to him. And then one of the questions is, what do you say about the St. Patrick's Day celebrations where we normally have all the Irish, MPs or whatever coming over, and most of them have boycotted this. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's like, and he, the other day, didn't know what was it? TPS was to do with refugee status and whatnot, and doesn't appear to know all sorts of things that are going on. Just seems to be blithely ignorant of stuff. But yeah, he's like, no, he answers to me. There will be no conflict of interest. Meanwhile, conflict of interest contracts are given out willy-nilly.
Second of all, we're not going to let him do anything where there's a conflict of interest.
Mr. President, your negotiations with the EU.
So it's just these wild assertions, right? Now, then you had, and admittedly this is a few days back now, but 21 employees of Doge resigning, refusing to, quote, dismantle critical public services. Quote, we swore, and they sent a letter in, I think, we swore to serve the American people and uphold our oath to the Constitution across presidential administrations, the 21 staffers wrote in a joint resignation letter. However, it has become clear that we can no longer honour those commitments. Wow. So even some of the Doge employees are not thinking this is all, they are thinking that this is all pretty terrible. John Favreau says, it seems like the tech folks assigned to make government more efficient don't think that's what Elon Musk is up to. As we just heard, we will not use our skills as technologists to compromise core government systems, jeopardize Americans' sensitive data, or dismantle critical public services. They also say in that letter. Goodness me. And this is what Alina Habar has to say. This is Trump's favorite lawyer.
This is what we're about. We're running this country like Jamie runs the business, like President Trump runs the Trump organization, like Elon Musk's running X. That's what we're doing. And if you want your budget balanced, if you want to not have a deficit, who better to do so than a businessman that understands how to make money, how to spend money, and how to get out of debt? And that's what we're going to do.
Which is, yeah, okay, maybe he is the richest man in the world. But in a bizarre admission, Alina Habar says the country is being run the way Trump ran the Trump organization, how Elon Musk runs X. The Trump organization was hit with a $355 million fine for fraud, and X shares have lost 80% of their value, or so on and so forth, or however much it is. But also the way that they were done. So if you're trying to run the government the way that Elon Musk runs X or SpaceX or any of his entities, you've got to understand that he was being investigated for 11 or 12 different organizations for the way he ran his business. In other words, he ran it illegally. And then he's come into the government and shut down all of those investigating organizations, which we'll come to a little bit later. It's worth noting that he's called Canada not a real country, and that feeds into everything that's going on with regard to Canada at the moment. This was in answer to a petition going around to strip him of his Canadian citizenship. We've also heard, as I told you before, because this is all looking rather unpopular. So the GOP, the Republican Party, have forbidden, basically, or advised, I should say, politicians, GOP lawmakers, not to have town halls where they go around and get the population, their electorate, to come out and ask them questions and talk about whatnot. It was becoming so controversial because people were complaining about Doge, etc., that actually they'd been advised to stop them. And Doge, what else do we have? Doge cut off payments for electricity, cell phone and internet service of US government employees who work in a high-risk area abroad. So there's some really controversial things being cut, by the way. And I could spend 5 hours just going through all the stuff that they've cut and all the dodgy things they've done. But it's rather galling when the Doge agency... So the agency is also considering spending about $25,000 to install a washer and dryer on a building's 6th floor, according to the February 25th invoice obtained by Politico. There's also a child's play area decorated with stuffed animal and toys, according to a photo of the room shared with Politico. People are definitely sleeping there, said one GSA staffer. Yeah, quite incredible. Meanwhile, they're spending stuff on rooms that they're sleeping in to administer all these swinging cuts. And here we have another controversial moment. I won't go into the details, but there's a whole segment on CNN about a Trump government official who enforces Doge cuts, firing employees for poor performance, but working as an influencer during business hours, filming from her government office, wearing clothes and wearing different clothing and whatnot. Just absolutely incredible. But there you go. And as I told you, in case you missed it, Trump has dropped investigations and enforcement actions against 89 law-breaking corporations, including 42 cases of the CFPB, 15 cases of the DOJ, 6 cases of the EEOC, 7 crypto cases at the SEC. So all of these, this is a golden age for corporate criminals, says Robert Reich. You have Elon Musk being investigated, but also cryptocurrency people, your David Saxes and whoever else. There are crypto investigations. There's one into that Chinese chap. That all seem to be rather... it seems rather coincidental that they've been dropped. There's an awful lot of grifting going on. And then add to that Trump's golfing weekends have cost taxpayers $18 million dollars from the state treasury so far. Just incredible. Why did Doge not cut this? And that's a pretty good question. So then you had Trump releasing this statement talking about how radical left lunatics as they often do, are trying to illegally and collusively boycott Tesla. And that's problematic. They're not illegally boycotting Tesla. The illegal stuff they're doing is burning them down and things like that. But the actual boycotting is not illegal. That's freedom of speech. And what you're seeing as a creeping, I think, set of infringements against freedom of speech in the US, which is deeply worrying. I want to do that in a separate video. I'm not going to do that now, but there are so many issues with the First Amendment. But you then had Trump doing an infomercial for Tesla and getting into a Tesla and basically showing them to the world and saying he's bought one for one of his relatives and everyone should go out and buy Tesla type thing, which is, imagine if Biden had done that with some entity that that a Democrat was involved with and did that on a White House lawn, Fox News would go insane. I mean, it's a conflict of interest, and arguably it's illegal, right? For me, you should have car manufacturers lining up to take the administration to court for promoting a competitor over them, and there being a massive conflict of interest that the competitor you are selling cars for on a White House lawn happens to be the guy in the middle of the White House, giving these swinging Doge cuts and getting contracts on the back of his work for Doge. It's just insane. And you see the piece of paper that he had that he's reading from. It was basically he was working as a salesman. That's the president I'm talking about, was working as a salesman for Tesla. It's absolutely disgusting. Just completely unacceptable. And then you hear stuff like this. This is Maggie Haberman talking to Anderson Cooper.
So, Anderson, Teddy Schleifer and I reported that Elon Musk has signaled to Trump's advisors that he wants to direct $100 million into Trump-controlled political entities. Now, that's different than what he has done in the past. In the past, he has funded a lot of political support for Donald Trump. It's, I believe more than $300 million in the past through his own PAC called America PAC. This would be something very different. It would be giving it to entities that are controlled by the Trump team, and it would be a different kind of approach. Now, all of this is happening. This has been being discussed over the last several days. The backdrop is, obviously that very contentious cabinet meeting last week. Musk also was at Mar-a-Lago all weekend. He traveled on Air Force One with the president. And then today, as you say, there was this display of several Tesla cars at a time when not just is Tesla getting violent protests, but its stock is falling. So that is the context in part.
And he's then giving $100 million to the president. Incredible. It's worth noting that his purchase of Twitter was financed by borrowing money. He used his Tesla stock as collateral. If Tesla stocks keep crashing, the banks and creditors could repossess Twitter. That is why Elon is panicking and why he pushed Trump to do the disgusting White House car show, says Tristan Snell there. Something to bear in mind. And then here he talks about, what Doge is going to have to end up doing in order to find the savings that he's tasked himself with finding.
So the wage support in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. That's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $700 billion a year. That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants. By essentially paying them to come here, and then turning them into voters.
Yes.
So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation, because they're losing. If we turn off this gigantic money magnet for illegal immigrants, then they will leave, and they'll lose voters.
So he is tasking himself with, quote, eliminating these massive expenditures, Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid. Honestly, this will cause a hell of a lot of people to protest. You will start seeing people on the streets, I'm sure. But this is what they're planning on doing. They said they wouldn't, they said they wouldn't, they said they wouldn't, and now they're going to do that. That's the only way that you can make those kind of cuts. And of course, goodness me, that money is a lifeline for so many people. But also, you've got to remember that this is what this is doing. This is to make tax cuts for the rich. The reason why they're trying to find all this money is because they want to put in these tax cuts for the rich, and that will shove up the deficit. And they really want to raise the deficit, the debt ceiling, so they can borrow more to do that. And if they can't raise a debt ceiling, then they desperately need to find that money from within the budget of the government. So that is literally robbing the poor to pay the rich. These are robber barons, oligarchs that are coming in, taking money from Social Security to give that in tax cuts to the rich. That is what is going on. So you will now see the Democrats, I'm sure, will be getting onto this now. There's lots of complaints about where the hell have they been. But you've certainly got Bernie Sanders that's doing this, and I could show you lots and lots of imagery of him going around it. And in fact, I do have some of this. I wasn't going to do that, but here we have, look, totally insane. First, the gym full of people, then an overflow crowd, then an overflow crowd, then an overflow crowd. More than 9,000 people came out in Warren, Michigan to say no to oligarchy and no to cuts in Social Security, Medicaid and VA programs. So this is Bernie Sanders. People are pissed off with this, right? And once you start getting the narrative right of this is oligarchy, and you have billionaires in the center of government, you know, here's rural Altoona, Wisconsin, with a population of 9,287. More than 2,000 people have lined up for our town hall today with Bernie Sanders. The working class of this country is very clear. We will not accept oligarchy in America. You have then, so loads of stuff like that. Anyway, that is what you are going to see more and more of, because it is a case of telling the people of America, and because Fox News won't do it, so it's about mobilizing a populist movement whereby people understand that this is robbing the poor to pay the rich. You have inflation being now, because already Donald Trump's figures are the worst on the economy that he's ever had, first and second tenure. His polling at the moment, even where people are still seeing him as doing a good job for the government. So you got those MAGA voters as saying you're doing a good job for the government. That is mainly on account of the immigration side of things. When it comes to the economy, even a bunch of those people are saying he's going the wrong direction on the economy. That is going to be his Achilles heel. And when you start having people getting hurt in a pocket in terms of inflation, so the cost of things going up, and then Social Security being taken away, and the cost of medicines going up, and Medicare and Medicaid being eaten into to pay the rich people for tax cuts, you have a really toxic environment for many, many working class people in the US. And this will play into hands of Bernie Sanders, and this should be exactly what the Democrats should be campaigning on. And I'm under the impression that there is a beginning of movement in that. You do get a lot of people. Chris Murphy's talking about corruption and grifting, and some of these others, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, so on and so forth. And then when you look at Doge itself, the Doge website is garbage, says Judd Legum here. The claimed savings have no relationship with the data provided. The data is provided grossly inflates the savings from each of the cancelled contracts. So we just launched our own website, the Musk Watch Doge Tracker, that breaks everything down. The Musk Watch Doge Tracker, which is currently updated to reflect the latest data posted by Doge, finds the actual verifiable savings is 8.6 billion, 92% less than the claimed savings of 105 billion. And then there's a thread here that explains exactly how that all works. But you've had lots of people talking about this. They even got 8 million wrong and posted it as 8 billion until that was pointed out that no, it's 8 million, and they had to correct it. Honestly, it seems like an absolute shit show, really. And then, of course, the economy itself is struggling in terms of the stock market. That's had a nightmare couple of days, largely driven by worries about inflation, worries about the way that Trump is managing things, and the attack on allies and trading partners in the form of tariffs. It's just incredible. But I have to note that there's an awful lot of gaslighting going on here. People are saying that either, the economy going into recession is not a bad thing, that's what we need to do in order to get to a greater good type thing, or just the level of like denying reality and selling people an alternate reality. This kind of gaslighting, fooling people, trying to fool people into thinking these ridiculous things is just insane.
And the only problem you have
this is Tommy Tuberville.
With these tariffs, there's always a scoreboard, and that's going to be the stock market. And people are looking at the stock market like, hey, this is how it's going to continue to be for months and months and months. That's not going to happen. We were probably over bloated with the stock market here for a while. We went up quite a bit. But at the end of the day, it's about fairness. It's about.
So he's now saying literally that the stock market's too high. So before, in the previous Trump administration, record stock market, I'm amazing. Look at how amazing. And if you remember that time, 2016 to 2020, he was always talking about the stock market and how it was the reflection of how well he was doing. And as soon as Biden had a high stock market, was it Jon Stewart's just done an amazing thing on this? I think it was Jon Stewart. Absolutely. No, it wasn't. It was Seth Meyers on A Closer Look. Absolutely brilliant section on exactly this. There's all these this montage of him talking about the stock markets being amazing, and as soon as Biden had stock markets, it's like, oh, that was because of me, right? And as soon as he's got lower stock market, that's because of Biden. So then they're all blaming the stock market on Biden. It's like, no, Biden's not. These are your policies. You're the one attacking allies with trade, with tariffs and starting these trade wars. You're the one that's not getting a handle on inflation. You're the one that is going to deport all of these immigrants in order to which would affect wages and inflation in terms of having a labor shortage, so on and so forth. And it's just ridiculous. It's like, oh no, the stock market was actually too high.
Quite a bit. But at the end of the day, it's about fairness. It's about having fair tariffs, everybody on the same page. And again, President Trump has put together a smart group of people that understand a lot about the dollar, a lot about foreign currency, all the things that are going on. At the end of the day, it's all going to work out, and it's going to work out better for the United States of America.
Now, he's employed a lot of smart people, but just not me. No. We have, and this is gaslighting. This is another example of massive gaslighting. I don't know if it's got the exact part of the quote here that I want to hear, but here it goes. This is an AP, so she slags him off afterwards for being Associated Press, typically.
If we could just step back for a second. When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today as he's proposing tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious for why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And
wow. She is literally telling the American people that tariffs are a tax cut. That is 100% false. That is a nonsensical lie. That is deeply irresponsible, but that is what this is gaslighting of the I mean, this is a complete exemplification of gaslighting. What are you talking about? Tariffs are a tax cut. Are they? Oh, okay. Oh, tariffs are a tax cut. Oh, now I believe. No, they're not. No, they are not.
Hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American people. And the president is a staunch advocate of tax cuts. As you know, he campaigned on no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, no taxes on Social Security benefits. He is committed to all three of those things, and he expects Congress to pass them later this year.
I'm sorry, have you ever paid a tariff? Because I have. They don't get charged on foreign companies. They get charged on the importers.
And ultimately, when we have fair and balanced trade, which the American people have not seen.
So she doesn't deny that. He's right. He has to correct her and say tariffs are not paid by the foreign company. They're paid on the importers. If you pay I've paid tariffs. I, as the American individual, pay that.
Seen in decades. As I said at the beginning, revenues will stay here, wages will go up, and our country will be made wealthy again. And I think it's insulting that you're trying to test my knowledge of economics and
I don't think it. I think it's insulting that you're lying to the American people.
The decisions that this president has made. I'm now regret giving a question to the Associated Press. Mary, go ahead.
I mean, goodness me, not only is she insulting and childish, but she's wrong, she's lying, and she's insulting the American people. Just incredible. Absolutely incredible. This is your daily reminder that we placed Caroline Levitt on our red list for sources last month, says Malcontent News. Do not use them, do not trust them. Levitt could say the sky is blue, but we would send someone outside to confirm. How bad is it? Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov is on our yellow list, which includes 3 independent sources for verifying statements or claims. Don't trust, verify. Caroline Leavitt is the first US government official ever added to our red list. She's that bad, she lies that much that Malcontent News has just dropped her as a source. Caroline Leavitt says Dean Blundell is out of her depth, it's almost criminal, no clue what a tariff is, feels insulted like a Christian soccer mum when someone with a brain fact checks her, no clue how the stock market works. She's an incredible representation of America's new cacistocracy, which is putting the least qualified people into roles that they don't deserve to be in. So Caroline Leavitt is 12 bells stupid. Goodness me. Absolutely incredible. So Trump is a wrecking ball that the Russians needed to finally destroy the US, says Jane Kievitz. Trade and defense alliances, giving the enemies of democracy free rein to make territorial gains globally. No US president has ever destroyed so much US equity value so quickly. And when you look at his second term in terms of the S&P 500 stock exchange, it's absolutely tanking compared to his first term, Obama's second term, and Biden's term as well. So all of them, they're moving in pretty much the same direction, and Trump's just massacring his own economy. And then when he's questioned on this, he says this, and as Call to Activism says, MAGA still can't tell me what the hell this means. Like, literally, what does this mean? And this kind of goes along with the gaslighting. It's almost gaslighting, or it's just like, I don't know what this is.
When you look at the market selling off, that didn't concern you, and where do you see it going?
So if you didn't hear that, when you look at the market selling off, it doesn't concern you? He says, no, it doesn't concern me.
Some people are going to make great deals by buying stocks and bonds and all the things they're buying. I think we're going to have an economy that's a real economy, not a fake economy. It was a fake economy. They were putting in all government jobs. You see what happened last month? We had more real jobs, and government jobs are way down. That's going to continue.
So he says it's a fake economy. I mean, what does that mean? You can't actually, are you worried about, the stock markets, etc., etc.? No, I'm not. It's a fake economy. Well, that's not an answer. It's so deeply irresponsible. And, blaming Biden for it.
Near term, we've got a Biden economy that, still most of Biden policies are in place. If you look at the Atlanta Fed GDP now number, it's showing negative first quarter, which is kind of, if you like, a metric of the inheritance of President Biden.
So just to remind you, you had the Biden economy for the 4 years before this, and you had growth in jobs numbers 48 months in a row, and then you had everything moving in the right directions, humming along nicely. It's gone down not because of the Biden economy, and yeah, you're saying these things are still in place, it's a Biden economy, blah, blah, blah. It's gone down because of the trade wars and the tariffs, and et cetera, et cetera.
A lot of that is also from a big increase in the trade deficit, which, as you know and you've been covering, Joe, is happening in part because people are anxious about future tariffs, and so they're stockpiling. And so that's a very, very temporary phenomenon. I think that medium term, what you're seeing is the biggest tax cuts in history, a massive deregulation, a productivity boom from artificial intelligence, and tariff.
So yeah, and there is some merit to this, which is okay. Once we get over the issues of the tariffs, then it will start growing again. We're gonna have a big tax cut for the rich. That'll be really good because trickle down always works really well. No, actually, you want to be. So this, I meant to mention this earlier. When you're taking away from Medicaid to pay the rich, that's trickle down economics. And it just doesn't work. All the data we have suggests that it doesn't work. In fact, I much more advocate for a trickle up. If you want money to be spent, particularly locally, you give it to the poorest people. What do poor people do when you give them £1,000? They go out and spank it. They're going to spend that money, generally speaking. They will spend much more of their money. If you give someone on benefits £1,000 now, they are going to spend that money, generally speaking. If I was to give Elon Musk £1,000, I'm not going to see that £1,000. So when you spend £1,000 locally, then that gets spent again and again, and it moves around. It's like a money multiplier, right? The claim is, well, these are the people that are going to create more jobs and more wealth. But actually, as it trickles down, it goes offshore. It does all sorts of things that do not benefit the economy. Do you think someone on benefits living down the road here is going to be taking that £1,000 that the government gives them and put it offshore so it doesn't benefit this nation? No. So it's this complete load of bollocks that if you give tax cuts to the rich, it's going to suddenly make everyone richer. It just trickled down economics doesn't work, and that's what your man here is advocating for. Now, there's been this huge, goodness me, well, everything's happening, isn't it, with Canada at the moment? We have an awful lot going on. If we look at what's going on with American politics at the moment, we have potential trade war with the EU. They've got ready. The EU, the US Trade Representative, calls EU policies out of step with reality in response to retaliatory tariffs. So the EU's getting ready to retaliate. You've got the Canadians involved now in a massive trade war. Canadian Foreign Minister condemns unjustified and unjustifiable trade war as Trump whacked up tariffs on Canada. So Canada then imposed 25% tariffs on nearly $30 billion of US imports. And that trade war is flaring up. You've got electricity now being, I think, tariffed as it comes down from Canada into the US. This is not going to help anyone, really. This is going to hurt a lot of people, Canadians as well as Americans, obviously. And there are tough times ahead. Absolutely incredible economic situation we've got going on. So now you've got Mark Carney, who is the Prime Minister, de facto Prime Minister, Prime Minister elect, I don't know. But he's now going to, apparently, he's filed to sell US bonds, US dollar bonds, to an undisclosed amount. Canada is selling US dollar denominated bonds to strengthen and diversify our current foreign currency reserves. It helps maintain liquidity and stability for the Canadian dollar in foreign exchange markets and provides cost-effective funding and economic resilience for Canada during our trade war with Trump, or with the D-head, as he says. Now, there can be some impacts of selling what could be $324 billion of US Treasuries securities. It can affect the US interest rates. It could affect the US dollar value. It could affect market confidence and Canada's economy as well, to lesser or greater degrees, right? But that's an interesting move there from Mark Carney as a bit of a retaliation. Now, it's interesting as well that all this is supposedly about trade surpluses. So we are buying more of Canadian stuff than we're selling to Canada, say the US, say Trump, and that's why he wants to put these tariffs on. But actually, the US runs a surplus in manufacturing trade with Canada. So if the goal of the tariffs is to reindustrialize the United States, a trade war with Canada is doubly counterproductive, says Brad Setzer. Canada is a wrong target, as it is in fact a good market for US manufacturers, the best in fact, and raising the price of industrial inputs like Canada's low-carbon aluminium makes US downstream industry less competitive. The US aluminium market, primary aluminium market, now clearly only with imports. US production is a fraction of demand. So raising the price of imports raises all prices that aren't locked in with long-term contracts. And that's why the original Trump 232 tariff was only 10%. Frankly, Trump's tweets make this sound less like a standard trade fight and more like a campaign of economic coercion to convince Canada to join the US, which I said with Edward Hunter Christie is in contravention of NATO Article 2 and 3. Or no, 1 and 2, I think it was. Absolutely shocking that I think literally NATO could go to war with the US because they have used economic coercion on Canada. Frankly, Trump's that is a costly agenda that Trump did not campaign on, and an agenda that lacks support among the US public and Congress. In other words, it's madness. Goes back to the guy at the beginning of this video that said this is just insanity. So then you got Howard Lutnick here as Commerce Secretary.
The end game here. Could you eventually get to a point where there's that you've got a huge economy, you've conjoined, you've merged the economies of Canada and the United States? Can you get to that point, you think?
Well, the best way, the president has said it, the best way to actually merge the economies of Canada and the United States is for Canada to become our 51st state. If they want to merge it, that's how you make it the 51st state. But think about this for a second. Why are American cars made in Canada? Why are they made in Canada? To the president, it just doesn't make sense. Why are American cars made in Canada? Those jobs should be in America. And that's what the president thinks, and that's what he says, and that's what he's going to execute. So the key point is Canada's going to have to work with us to really integrate their economy. And as the president said, they should consider the amazing advantages of being the 51st state of the United States of America.
I've got one.
Ha ha ha, hilarious. And to the point where Jesse Waters on Fox News, speaking again with the guy from Shark Tank, although that was Howard Lutnick.
Before we get to Elon, can you believe Canada tried to shut off our electricity? I mean, it's almost like they want us to invade.
It's almost like they want us to invade. I couldn't stop listening to that earlier. I had that on loop, like, just to get the idea. Like, so he's literally considering invasion, and then it's like they want us to invade. I mean, we are going to invade, but it's like they do not laugh about this. This could end up being militaristic. It's absolutely incredible. And then, of course, you've got Greenland. JD Vance, if we need to take more territorial interest in Greenland, that is what President Trump is going to do. He doesn't care about what the Europeans scream at us. I don't care about what these people complaining about us moving into Greenland say, even though it's their territory, it's under their jurisdiction. I don't care what they say. This is the new American imperialism. Greenland, the election was won by a centre-right party who told Trump, we are not for sale, even though some people online were like, yeah, this party, we're going to take Greenland now because they're well up for it. No, you don't understand who they were. But anyway, incredible, absolutely incredible what's going on at the moment. And I thought this was just a touching little anecdote here from Dimitri Soudas. Americans are sorry. Flying back to Canada from Europe, I find myself seated next to a gentleman with an army bag. I always greet soldiers, so I introduce myself, ask where he's from, what he does. He's with the US Air Force. He doesn't share much, perhaps mindful of what could be misconstrued. I thank him for his service. He asks my name and where I'm from. Canada, I say proudly. He looks down for a moment and then says softly, I'm sorry. Thank you for that, I reply. We'll handle it just fine. This wasn't just any American, yet here he was expressing regret and unspoken apology for what his commander-in-chief is doing. Absolutely incredible. And I just want to leave you with the words of, because I could talk to you at length about, you know, what's going on with Canada and the US, but I just want to leave you with the words of Bob Geldof, the famous singer, this is what he had to say recently. So bearing in mind he's done an awful lot, so the Band-Aid move and all the money he's raised for kids in Africa, etc., he's very much into humanitarian aid, and this is in response to USAID funding cuts, people like Doge, etc.
This is Trump and Musk and all those other creeps.
Do you think, I mean, the world's changing so much now. Do you think people are still really up for those kind of fights?
No, because I think, creeps like Trump and Musk have sucked out all of that generosity out of the air, the most powerful man on the planet, the richest man in the world, have decided to take away any of the life support systems of the poorest children on the planet, quite literally take the last food from their mouth, quite literally take the bandages off the gang-raped woman, quite literally stop AIDS, 5 million AIDS sufferers getting their things. So they will die in a matter of weeks.
This is the USAID cuts you're
This is
talking about.
Trump and Musk and all those other creeps. And, I, of course, get angry. Angry is my default mechanism, but it served me well.
I'm angry. Just incredible what is going on. And it's happening in broad daylight. It's corruption. It's grifting. It's robber baron. It is stealing off the poor to pay the rich. And the American people will not take it for 4 years. There will be a movement. It will happen. Mark my words. Anyway, Elon Musk is representative, I think, of all that's wrong in American politics at the moment. Let me know what you think. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.